Lutterman. My name is Jacob Stokes. I'm a content marketing specialist and managerial editor of the Practical 365 podcast. Like I said, I'm going to kick things off today. So thanks for joining. So after first being announced back in March, Microsoft Security Copilot has been gaining a bunch of hype. But the real question is, how will Microsoft Security Copilot impact cybersecurity as a whole? Which we actually have Andre Lutterman on today to answer that question for us. Andre is a senior technical specialist of cybersecurity, as well as a member of the CTO office of Microsoft. He's going to be exploring Microsoft Security Copilot's key features and capabilities and how they integrate into Microsoft's security ecosystem. A few housekeeping before we get started. This is a Teams meeting. We love doing tech talks and Teams meeting because the chat, is always exciting and people are able to, interact with each other, share their interesting questions. But Andre can't always look at these questions, so feel free to put them in the chat. Myself and Quest Software has Vineet Bhagava on. He's a sales engineer. We're going to be looking for questions and taking those questions and asking Andre at the end when we have our Q&A session. We'll also be dropping some helpful links, throughout the session on articles and blogs on, Copilot and things similar to our topic. Shameless plug, big shout out to, everyone who, I see some familiar names in here, who attended TEC 2023 in Atlanta. It was a great success. It was a really good time. We're going to have TEC 2024 in Dallas next year. It's a little bit later than this past year. It's going to be in October, but it's going to be at a great brand new venue, and everything's bigger than Texas. So hope to see you guys out there in Texas next year. Also, we have a tech talk coming up next week. What should and should not be in your Active Directory disaster recovery plan. That's a mouthful. It's with Burke Matsuya and Brian Desmond from Ravenswood. November 9th at 11 a.m. Eastern. It's going to be a great talk. These guys had a great session at TEC 2023, so definitely worth looking into. So enough the plugs. We're going to jump in today's tech talk, Microsoft Security Copilot, potential hype and risk. Andre, I'm going to pass this over to you to, do your topic.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob, for the intro. It will take a moment until I can share my screen here. That's working fine as far as I can see, so everybody can see my presentation. Jacob, just give me a hint if that's working out. Okay, in this case, thanks.
That's good.
Perfectly. Okay, I would like to talk a little bit about Security Copilot. What is it? What is behind it? What is needed? But also some questions around what is it good for? Do I really need something like that? Why it's necessary in the security world? And things like that. And how does it, or what is different actually to what ChatGPT and other large language models offer typically? So there's definitely potential. There's lots of hype, but is there any risk with that as well? So you already got an intro of me in this case. I don't want to stress that any further, but you have probably, or you have to live under a rock to more or less to not notice what Microsoft is doing in terms of the large language model adoption in terms of ChatGPT. So definitely AI technology is here, and that has started somehow with things that were done by OpenAI with ChatGPT 3.5. ChatGPT 3.3 in this case was around 2020 and didn't get that much coverage. What was the difference then during the time? The main difference here was, so with the finalization of ChatGPT 3.5, the amount of training data that was put into such a system is like more than 10 times bigger than ever before. And it's still increasing with things like ChatGPT 4 or 4V as well. UBS and also some of the main people from IBM that were looking for the AI world or looking over the AI world at this point said so that it just took ChatGPT to get to 100 million users, or to the first million users, 5 days until they got there. And we have today only on the OpenAI platform already more than 100 million users active already. So what is the potential here? Microsoft is adopting large language models, so natural language interactions from a chat standpoint, into productivity features. And we using that for how can you leverage that for your business, which is a little different from a public service. So there are also some risks using something like the normal ChatGPT 3.5, which is free of charge. ChatGPT 4, also at OpenAI, is a little different. Can be used for at least a $20 fee. But this data, to a certain degree, can be looked into also by OpenAI and can be used also for retraining the model. So there may be also ways to get some of the data out of the system as well. That's why it's always a good idea to have some kind of a private service if you use something like that for an enterprise, or you would like to share as well some of the classified data with such a system. And Microsoft has worked out the Azure OpenAI service already, where you can adopt the large language models for enterprise chats. For example, Siemens just announced something like that. Daimler is using that, also Mercedes-Benz in this case for its cars. Same is true for some of the Stellantis work that is doing that. So a private internal service for knowledge or information sharing, for example, as well as at Bosch, which is public already with this information, can be, it may be a good idea to have something like that used by the Azure OpenAI service with the boundaries inside your tenant, with data classification ideas around that, and also a possibility on how to keep data secret that is not accessible to everybody. But from a collaboration standpoint, there's good things going on also from the x365 Copilot, which completely is different on how we would like to work in security. Because an hallucinating AI, so something that would like to write a poem or get a new text or have new business ideas, something like that, is something that, as an AI technologist, you typically tune in a way that it has the possibility to get to those new ideas. The question is more, do you want something like that in security? Maybe not. There may be a different tone, temperature, or tuning necessary to get a system like that is super creative, more down to the facts and more to the interactions that you need from a security standpoint. And that's what we did. So the AI, so large language models like ChatGPT 4 and specialized large language models out of this fork are definitely changing the way on how we will work together in the future as well. The thing is, or what we use in internal saying, you won't be replaced by AI, but you may be replaced by a person that knows how to use AI. So Microsoft has an idea about how to integrate the different copilots. There's M364 Copilot, which is more like an assistant in your everyday work in the M365 world. Same is true for salespersons sales personnel in the Dynamics 365 world as well, where you can turbocharge your workforce with a copilot for every job role, actually creating interactions with customers in a quick way, analyzing customer information in a quick way, inputs from customers much quicker than you could do manually. And there's also Copilot being launched in Power Platform. So you more or less describe what you would like to have, and the AI will build Power Platform integrations and dashboards and automation around that as well. So those are quite creative AIs. So they need to create new text components. They need to customize text to a certain degree. But there are use cases where you want a more down to the facts machine learning model behind that. And that's completely different in the Microsoft Security Copilot world. So what we have here is a machine learning model that doesn't have the hallucination level that you see in other public services, for example. It's specially trained as well for security use cases and is very much sticking to what information is inside the organization and the different systems are giving it. The potential here is, and that's the good thing, that you can defend at machine speed with the integrations into your security stack, into your different security tools, because the most friction inside an organization is actually done when you would like to integrate different security tools into more or less what everybody promised into one single pane of glass. And I haven't seen the single pane of glass yet in the complete security world, but there's definitely potential there. So you know probably about all the MC65 defenders, so that can secure and protect around the collaboration world, so meaning Exchange Online, maybe the on-prem world as well, your SharePoint, your OneDrive, your Teams environment, but also in the identity space for Defender for Identity or identity protection for Entra ID, and as well possibilities like Defender for Cloud Apps, so any kind of exfiltration path outside. So giving you more or less an integrated attack story where an attack started and where did it end, how far did the attacker come, and what is the best way to get them out. That's fine. I will talk about a little bit later about why you need something, or why you might need something in addition. But just saying, or going over to GitHub Copilot, which is more or less a coding help to increase developers' productivity, accelerate innovations, give you new ideas on how to do your development work as well. And that's an easy way, and definitely also a more factual AI conversation where you can just have it via conversation and describe what you would like to have and get coding and development ideas or direct implementations actually out of the system. So what makes the generative AI important for the security use case then? And the main reason actually is because we have a change, or at least an ongoing change, more or less, in the security world. What we see today from our internal optics at Microsoft is more than half a billion new pieces of malware every day. And if you look into AV Test Institute, they just released a certain study for the European world as well, where they say, okay, there are more than 560,000 new pieces of malware every day. We already know that AI is, for example, built also in every kind of the Defender world. Your Defender AV on a Windows endpoint, for example, in Windows 10 and 11, or Server 22, 2019, is using a local machine learning model already to identify unknown threats, because most of those malwares are only seen once. So they are not iterations of the same malware. We see 96% of every malware just only one time overall in the whole world, in all our optics. And that means this kind of way, or this kind of strategy, is increasing, and it's going faster and faster every month, every year. The question is how fast, or what time is left for you to react to actually defend your organization. And we all know also as well, we have a global shortage of skilled security personnel to a certain degree. So how can we lower the barrier of entry to let you defend your organization quite quickly? We saw in our internal optics as well, that was the fastest attack that we saw where people didn't really care about security. They actually lessened the default security in M65 in their own infrastructure as well. We saw attacks that went on for in a time frame like 15 minutes to complete ownership of the environment, because they didn't do the basic stuff or enable the basic stuff from a security standpoint. And we expect that for people that don't care about certain types of security, or actually lower certain default security settings in their on-prem or M365 or Azure world, to come down to something like 5 minutes. So you will have a 5 minutes time span in 2025 that we assume to detect that an attacker is there and get him out in this time span as well, so that you will still be able to access your own organizational IT environment. So that means there has to be some extra bit for people that aren't aware or don't have the super duper SOC and forensic guys inside their organization already, to defend their organization at machine speed. So as I said already, with this malware example, the odds are against today's defenders already to a certain degree. What we see from Entra ID It's more than 4,000 password attacks per second from our latest Microsoft security report that was published just recently. We also see that there are more than 3.5 million open cybersecurity professional offerings or opportunities already. So the question is more who will close the gap? We have good protection methods with the Defender stack and the M365 Defender stack, Sentinel and things like that, integrating this way automation features around that. But sometimes the burden actually to understand the different tool sets to a certain degree is still something with a hard learning curve sometimes, and also not easy to manage for smaller organizations. So how can we help with that as well? So we need some kind of a new approach. So in every kind of where we don't have this integration between the different toolset that is already out of the box there for any kind of M365 Defender customer, so any customer that has in the M365 enterprise world that has more than 2 of the Defenders, you already have correlation between the different information, for example, that your mailing system knows about any thing that is newly seen on your endpoints, and they will talk to each other and know how to block between those things. But if you add something or additional security components or other siloed tools into your security toolset, how can you handle those toolsets to get to a complete vision of what's happening in your organization, actually have some kind of a view about the reach of the breach? And also understand if there's any kind of misconfiguration happening in your own cloud environment, maybe also in third-party clouds as well. And that's a good thing. Microsoft is the only of those hyperscalers in the cloud world that actually cares about their on-prem still, about their hybrid environment, definitely about Azure, but also about multi-cloud. So if you want any kind of mixture between AWS, GCP, Azure, or whatever service you're using, we can still help you to get to a holistic security overview and also react to or respond to attacks in this way. The thing is, with most of those different infrastructures, or maybe also infrastructure or platform as a service ways, there are disconnected processes on how to handle security problems, misconfigurations, posture drifts, and actual attacks around them, the things. So there's lots of inefficient collaborations between the different departments in some of the larger organizations, but also inefficient collaboration between the knowledge keepers in the different areas of cloud and maybe also on-prem services. So what are the benefits of AI for security? It's quite easy to say. One is definitely there's prioritization, automation, understanding what's going on. Definitely speed, the ability to understand unique threats in real time, even if you aren't the super duper deep technical person already, or you still have a learning curve to go. And definitely scale. So if you have some like a larger scale outbreak, it's no problem with an AI to respond to such a threat easily. And also to process large volumes of data. AI is perfect at understanding large volumes of data, also complex different data sources as well, and getting the different ties between all those silos together. So it could be something like definitely the Microsoft service around Azure, Microsoft 365, or your on-prem world, but could also be other public clouds, anything from your networking or firewall environment, legacy theme, your on-premises sources, and also the apps, users, and infrastructure. One important thing, and that's definitely a learning curve as well for how Microsoft adopted Azure OpenAI service, and with that also the different copilots into their environment and how we adopt them into the different tenants. So those different services are grounded in responsible AI principles. So that means privacy and security, a real important point. That means that we already do something like during the development cycle, but also external validation of any of the different possibilities to understand. When ChatGPT 3.5 came up as a public service, there were lots of people fiddling around. So understanding if there's any kind of bias, could you get some of the information out of the system? How can you do prompt attacking or something like that? And the thing is, that is a little different in how Microsoft adopted those services, because there is a complete governance and security process around how we would like to do that. And we will talk about the privacy of the data as well, and how we integrate that. But also, when the first GPT-3 model was built, it was around 2020, they still had problems actually doing some kind of an unbiased AI model to a certain degree. Harvard Business School published a complete study, more or less, of large information about how to get bias out of an AI. And that's not a problem that much for security, but definitely if you would like to interact with certain people. We know also from some kind of the image recognition AIs that are different than ChatGPT, that there may be biases, for example, for against people of color or something like that, if the training data that they were trained with weren't containing a good mix of different ethnics as well. But as I said, Harvard Business School did a complete study in 2020 and published information on how to get bias of an eye. And one of the conclusions also was it's actually much easier to get to an unbiased AI than actually changing minds of the humans that are interacting with that. So meaning training data to a certain degree is sometimes, and that's the thing that we have to take care about, only a mirror of society. If you talk about large language model, that's different in the security world, definitely, but just for a normal chat bot, I would say, that's still valid. And if the AI model before 3.5 was trained with data that hasn't been taken care of, so or hasn't been taken into account, that there may be some problems with the actual training data, and people that would try to prompt the AI model to do things that it shouldn't do, yeah, there may be problems around that. So one of the things that I saw, for example, early in the beginning of AI, that somebody tried to ask a large language model to write a rap. And most of the raps beforehand, or most of the rap music is actually not that friendly towards women, mainly. The training data in this case will also lead the AI to believe that it's completely okay to do certain things and say certain things about women. And there has to be a certain training instance that makes sure that responsible AI principles, and with that, fairness and accountability is taken care of. And also inclusiveness is taken care of. And that's a change on how we train AI models since 2020 already. ChatGPT 3.5 in its first release, from OpenAI in this case, was not completely perfect with that. Also, the ChatGPT model of this era only had knowledge about data that was November 2021 from a training model perspective. So this is something that has changed. So we have now governance, rules, training and practices, and also tools and processes during every step of that kind of training environment, especially in the security world, that will take care that this is not possible to do something wrong. Also, if you ask the Security Copilot to do certain tasks that are out of its typical reach as well, it will definitely say no. For example, if you try, write me a tool that will check or try to, so you're more or less trying to convince it to write an exploit tool, for example, it will say, you can't do that with me. I don't help with any kind of offensive things. For offensive security in this case. That's also one of the protection methods that we see. So understanding the models that are new for something like a security AI. So what's new? We had AI already, as I said, in the detection stack of most next-gen EDR solutions. So but there's still semantic meaning for search, information extraction, or classification, and it generates new content, for example, images, languages, or code given in the prompt. There's a shift from process and syntax to intent and semantics, so you can actually work in the way that you are used to work with that. So you don't have to stick to a certain UI, certain processes that are in the system, maybe from a next finish perspective, so meaning like a wizard or something like that. The AI in this case can make sure that certain processes and also certain QA, so meaning quality assurance features, are still taken care of during any kind of incident. So meaning, even if you're working in a different role or in a different way, it's still taking care that you do the necessary steps, that all necessary tick boxes are ticked to a certain degree, so that you can be sure that everybody, even if the person have different skill sets or different working styles, are still doing the same outcomes and repeatable outcomes in the same quality. And that's an important thing. So what are the foundational models? So that's a large language model that uses deep learning to produce human-like text. And the data, this could be more or less everything in the normal language model, but it could be also, and we already have released GPT-4V in the Azure OpenAI services, where you can also do things like put visual information into the system as well and interact with that, but also do normal chatting, so meaning actually voice interaction with that. That's not yet in the way that we use Security Copilot. That's also a different training model and adaptation. But the tasks that Security Copilot can do is still more or less on the same level. So question and answering, the complete sentiment analysis, information extraction, object recognition, and instructions that you can do on, for example, response actions. And that's definitely a good thing to move from a narrow use case, more or less, to a general AI. So more or less creating specialized AI models for certain jobs that are responsive to task-based prompting and then can be trained. And the Security Copilot is pre-trained on security use cases already very, very much, but it can still learn from anything you would like to handle certain things and you and your special organizational needs as well. And that's a good thing. But with every kind of technology, there is some kind of a dual use as well. So how can generative AI, and I don't mean Security Copilot here, just in general, meaning something like all the generative AIs that are on the market as well. So Meta, for example, had some early leaks of their Llama AI, and this was then also adopted into several university projects, actually not really taking care of copyright. And also some of the attackers or cyber actors, I would say, adopted that in a certain way to use it and create malicious things as well. So can generative AI empower attackers? I would say definitely yes. What we already know here is that, for example, during the Ukraine war, as well as the Israeli-Palestinian war that is going on right now, that hackers are already preparing large language models and using large language models and also a generative AI in terms of picture generation to create, for example, fake news, lots of that. So the Russians actually did lots of interesting campaigns that were also reused by some of the media agencies around the world. So actually spreading false information from that because they think that this kind of source was reliable. But we'll see other use cases as well in the future. And that's not from the technology that we are providing, just from creating their own large language models for cyber warfare. So what can we expect from our adversaries in this case? We can definitely see that they will try to use that for malware generation, sometimes also for the automated vulnerability discovery for their targets, customizing exploits, and password cracking as well. It's quite easy to do that with an AI if it's not trained on doing certain things. What we already see is something on phishing and social engineering is the thing that's coming up. So they're creating better text components for their phishing campaigns using large language models, even if they don't understand the language. And it can also be used to disguise malicious code. Not the normal ChatGPT that's available to you and me. It's just a large language model on another AI that they created specifically for something like that. One of them is also called BadGPT, even if it's not a derivation of the original ChatGPT. And it could also be used for command and control communication, automating that a new infected endpoint actually is talking to each other and what should do in the beginning. So one of the things that we can definitely see that Security Copilot will get into the UI of MC65 Defender. So it will be integrated with MC65 Defender. There may be, and as there is still, and there's lots of additional training efforts needed. And it's also a more costly thing than any kind of other cloud workload, I would say, because it's doing it, or it's using a lot of processing power. There will be extra costs associated with that. I'm not completely sure on the final pricing yet. In your region, definitely not, and expect that to be available somewhere around change of the year for your environment. It's not replacing Defender, it's just giving you additional functionality on how to handle the data from the different sensors in your infrastructure and get more speed into the environment. It's not doing the initial detection, it's more on how to combine the data and reply and respond to that. So the attackers will use their own AI models probably for disinformation, spear phishing, some kind of their cybercrime activities, and also impersonation fraud. And what we already saw was fake voice message, even video conferencing with the CEO. So CEO fraud 2.0, actually starting a video call with some of the accounting persons in your organization, and they think that they have just talked to their CEO, advising them or requiring them, recommending them to do some kind of initial wire transfer to an external company. So that's something that we already have seen so far. So there are lots of chatbots, deepfakes, and voice clones already. And how long does it take to get to a certain degree of deepfake or voice clone? So I need like 15 seconds of voice recording of a person to create a good deepfake, and around 1 minute 30 or something like that of video material to make a good video clone of you. And yeah, that's the thing that will definitely go on, but there's also good or bad ways in this case on how we can identify an AI-based clone or deepfake. And yeah, that's an ongoing battle, and that will be probably one of the battles in the future as well. So we saw already attacks, for example, there's a Forbes article available on that as well, where fraudsters clones company director's voice. Lots of other articles on deepfakes and voice clonings, and also how other AIs, open source AIs, for example, are now adopted from certain threat actors to creatively use them for malicious purposes or creating their own malware. And how they do certain attack paths and use or make use of the AI. So it's also lowering the barrier of entry for you for defense, but it's also lowering the barrier of entry in general for people that use other AI models for attacking you or to attack you. So how does Security Copilot work in this sense? So it's quite easy. So you as a human, even if you are not super skilled, you can submit a prompt, which is more or less like a chat interaction. And the skill of the future will be submitting good prompts. So actually have some information on what the context is. There was a good speech as well that will be coming up here on the TED Talks as well on how to use OpenAI or Azure AI service actually in M65 administration. The good thing is that you can always give like a system prompt of what your environmental boundaries are, what the organizational structure is, and things like that. So meaning we are a company like that, we use this and this technology, and what can we do? But somebody can prompt us, I'm asking a question, more like the clear text question into the chat. What Security Copilot then does is it determines the initial context and builds a plan using the all available skills, so all the different things that it learned already, and which is pre-trained to a certain degree, but could also be ongoing learning from your organizational use cases. Then executes the plan to get the required data and answers that, and it combines all data and context to you, more or less, and work out a response. And a response could also be a response plan. And the good thing is it can also help you to execute the plan at scale. So you will receive the response, just the AI itself will then format the data in a way that is appealing to you. So how does it work, or what are the basic requirements? And that's my personal take on that. So before you would like to integrate something like Microsoft Security Copilot, it's quite important that you have certain sensors in your environment, and that will be in a later step also open up to third-party systems as well. And you will see some of the third-party systems that will be there from a start later on. But the basic requirement that you have is actually having something like Defender for Endpoint in your environment, so that you can use the data set. And we, as Microsoft, spent 2.5 years of engineering efforts to get the different data models behind our different defenders, Microsoft Sentinel, and everything that we use from a security standpoint, also Defender for Cloud and things like that, into one schema, one data model. So that's easy to understand and standardized towards all the different platforms. And that's a good thing, because with any kind of AI, it's good when the data set itself is quite well-tuned and also valid, because there's nothing more cumbersome in security operations, which are with a tool that alarms you without any kind of reason, or just gives you lots of false positive and things like that. And also has some kind of unstructured way to display or store data. So the question is more, how can you make sense? How can an AI make sense of data that doesn't make sense at the beginning? So a good combination to start with is Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, at least, or I would recommend also the M365 Defender Stack overall. Having Microsoft Sentinel to integrate all the third-party data sources as well, if you want to do that. So Microsoft Sentinel is the cloud-borne SIEM system by Microsoft. And as an M365 Defender customer, you typically have some free ingestion into Microsoft Sentinel as well. And for the endpoint world as well, we talked about posture. And one of the main postures I would see, definitely in your cloud environment, could be everything that is externally available. But one of the other postures, or the more important postures to start with, I would say, is the endpoint world. So what is the set or the status of your end user computing devices? And are they configured correctly? What are the policies around that? And with that, we can also integrate that easily into something like conditional access. So you should definitely enrich incidents with something like Sentinel, and then assess security posture of devices and the security status of devices, and know your devices as well. So here are some of the data flows that Security Copilot is doing. And that looks a little complicated, I think, at the beginning. But what it's doing here, it's prompting in Microsoft Security solutions to like the different defenders. Could be Sentinel, could be Intune, and with that, Microsoft Security Copilot is added. So what you do, the user prompts, actually chats from security products are sent to Copilot. Copilot accesses plugins, which are more or less connectors for pre-processing, and sends the modified prompts to the large language models. You will receive the response and the different app commands, for example, to the different products. That's an easy way to use that. And as you already see here, there could be additional products integrated there from the start, which could be, for example, if you're using a third-party SIEM system like Splunk, or you would like create something like a CMDB, your vulnerability management, or also a ticketing system like ServiceNow. So those are data sources that Microsoft Security Copilot already understands now. The important thing is, this is not a public AI service. So this is powered by data that is unique to you and your organization. So that means Security Copilot data is within the boundaries of your tenant. And that means it's also ingesting, if you would like to do that, and can leverage, for example, like the M365 and Microsoft International Threat Intelligence data. So if you would like to enrich something like that into any kind of incident, or you would like to do something like malware reversing of a file that you find during an incident, you don't have to do that manually. It's typically a long-term process, and you have to have certain skills. The AI can help here as well. One of the caveats with third-party data sources, or adding or connecting data sources that are not structured in the correct way, or not data quality is low in this kind of silos, it means the garbage in, garbage out. So if you are creating or adding data sources or connecting data sources, third-party data sources into Copilot that are not yet of good data quality, Security Copilot can't make much out of this data as well. Just saying, if you would like to do that. And with that, I would like to give you an impression on how that works. So we have an incident here where somebody tried to, something is going on in my environment here. With an SAP system, somebody downloaded something from an SAP system which was quite highly confidential. So we have the incident summary, but we want to continue the investigation. I don't understand what the incident is all about. And I asked Security Copilot, can you summarize the incident for me to a certain degree? And can you elaborate on the entities involved? So Security Copilot here comes back the next level of detail of the 3 identities associated with the specific incident. For example, the US family and version of the host, more details on the account, like the AAD tenant and user ID and all the different departments and contact data. So I know now that's the person that's working in sales, and even their job title, location, and everything like that. So I understood that in the incident, there's some kind of a malicious IP named, or something of the alerts is saying that this is malicious, and I want to have more details about this. So why is this being flagged as malicious? So we can ask Security Copilot to do just that. In this case, Security Copilot calls on Microsoft Defender's threat intelligence, and we already see that the reputation score of 100, which means with 100% confidence, this IP is malicious. Beyond that, we see that the specific reasons or rules of why it was classified as malicious. So 2 known intelligence profiles already say that this IP address is also tied to Cobal Strike, so meaning some kind of a tech framework, and Silk Typhoon, which is a Chinese state-based threat actor, and some of the specific infrastructure information as well, hosted by ASN, so that is already known to be some kind of a command and control for infrastructure. To see really big things. I already see a question that, can the AI be tricked to act in a malicious way? And that's a good thing. So I haven't been able to convince it yet to do something like that. So it's always saying, if you would like to do something offensive, or write me something like a tool that could leverage a certain vulnerability or something like that, it's always saying, no, I'm not doing that. So there's lots of training going on in this regard so that you can't misuse that. Doesn't mean that, so with technology, there's always things going on. So that's an ongoing thing for us as well to keep in this business, right? So we have to make sure that it can't be misused in a certain thing. So now that I'm not so that scared, I don't know what Cobal Strike is or Silk Typhoon, so we can ask Security Copilot to tell us more about these. Security Copilot connects to threat intelligence again. It gives me more information. We learn here, maybe, just a sec, that Cobal Strike is a tool commonly used by threat actors in various cyber attacks, and this actor group here, Silk Typhoon, is actually specific and is using that for a sophisticated attacks globally. So you also have the option to learn more in each case. So regardless of my skill levels, these summaries immediately raise the severity of the incident. I know that I have an active state-sponsored actor in my environment, and they also have some kind of a backward connectivity already and are accessing data that is confidential towards an identity that is valid in my infrastructure. What I love about this capability is that it puts decades of Microsoft understanding of threats directly at my fingertips, more or less. So something that I have to learn for a long time as an analyst is now delivered with context quite easily. If I didn't have this, I would need to hunt around the internet hoping that someone was tracking this particular actor and had no association to the infrastructure and things like that. I have all the connections at my fingertips. Now that I know that the severity of the incident is high, I can move to understanding the devices associated with this user, like whether they are compliant. So meaning what are devices are involved here, and I would like to understand more about what the attacker is using. In this case, Security Copilot knows to choose Microsoft Intune and comes back with the response showing the 3 devices. When we expand those devices here, we can see that the compliance and encryption status is more or less concerning because they are not compliant and not setting up with security like that, like they should be. That could be due to the misconfiguration in my environment, but how to fix that actually? I now move to hunting across the different defenders to see if the user in this incident has associated with any other alerts. My goal here is more or less to understand what else might be related based on the user identity, knowing that it could be compromised. So Copilot leveraged the previous information, so it's context, in the prompt to respond to construct a custom KQL query that I don't know how to create. In our response, we see, and it's already doing the KQL query for me. It shows me what the KQL query is about if I would like to learn that and take that and have an idea of what the KQL query was actually looking for so that I can still review what it's doing. But it also shows me the results of the execution already. So here we can see that the user's emails records are there, and there are lots of inbound mails that are looking fishy as well. Thing is, Copilot, I don't know, you said something is a question about Copilot and SQL code. I don't know what Copilot you used, but I can say that for KQL queries, Security Copilot is quite capable of doing that as well. It's also writing PowerShell scripts and things like that. That is not a problem anymore, I would say. I probably have to retry that. I don't know what ChatGPT model you used or what Copilot you used, but I can say that the GPT-4 border-based models are quite capable. So if I'm satisfied with the investigation steps here, I ask Copilot to write me a report based on the investigation. So providing assessment with supporting evidence for my stakeholders. And what this actually is one of the most asked features actually from some of the security investigators. So they say, so why I'm getting the attacker out, I need to inform my stakeholders. Can we automate it to a certain degree? Can you create a PowerPoint? An easy PowerPoint for people that aren't super deep into the technology or the security incident yet, but just giving them an easy information that I don't have to take care about informing them in detail. So and that's something I can do here. I can ask here to write a report easily, and it summarizes what took place, gives the confidence level, and Security Copilot also provides several actionable recommendations. So what we need to do to get the attacker out. So I can do that manually, but I can also ask Security Copilot to automate the process for me. But I still need to say that this has to happen to a certain degree. It's not done automatically. So it's easy to learn how to implement these various steps, or I could escalate to others within my organizations as well. That's fine. One last thing I wanted to hit on is the feature called the Pinboard. So here you can see me pinning the investigation and report to the Pinboard so that any new members joining the investigation can benefit from the work that I already did, more or less. The Pinboard is one feature of Security Copilot that allows for streamlining collaboration. That's an easy way so that anybody else can benefit from others' work without duplicating efforts. So as I stated at the part of the demo, I picked an example that crossed into several different areas of security operations. So with Security Copilot, I can definitely understand my security posture in the different situations for my on-prem world, for my identity posture overall, for Entra ID, for MC65, for the Azure or multi-cloud world as well. Though I was responding to an easy incident here with SAP and some of the data things and some of the client and mail stuff, I was able to get answers to questions regarding the compliance status and recommendations, and giving me further context on how to improve in my organization. I can do incident response, looking at the entities within the original incident, and understand the incident further without super deep knowledge about the technical side here. Someone in sales downloaded a file from an infrastructure known to be associated with tools used to attack an organization and a prolific threat actor, more or less, who is tied to a nation state. I was able to make this kind of information and also make sure that it's true positive and that this will require immediate action. And I could create reporting on that. So after the fact, definitely, but also give that immediately to stakeholders to make sure, hey, we have a real thing going on here. We are doing something about it, but be aware that this is happening. So it's time to pull a complete report for stakeholders outside the SOC team. Remember, the SOC analyst's core competency might not be writing up reports or creating PowerPoint slides in this regard to this audience. This can be a distraction from their intent actually to defend the organization and taking necessary time to a certain degree. Here, Security Copilot already has visualized the entire complex kill chain for more technical persons, if I would like to do that. But this may be exhausting to non-technical stakeholders. So we can also deliver the PowerPoint just as a file in minutes or in seconds, more or less, and take this task out of the Security Operations Center if necessary. So free up the time, and then I can download the PowerPoint here easily. So that's the things that I wanted to show today to you, more or less. So Security Copilot is a different piece of a large language model derivation of ChatGPT. It's more down to earth. The main thing here is lowering the barrier of entry to defend your organization at machine speed. It's definitely not the same than a GPT 3.5 model that you have to chat on the public OpenAI services. It's creating the data boundary or within the data boundaries of your tenant environment with all the different security safeguards from a data perspective as well. And if you have any questions that are not yet mentioned, or Jacob will keep me here, he will keep me honest as well. We are now open for your questions.
Andre, it looks like you answered a lot of them throughout, but I think there was one you might have slipped. How does Security Copilot protect from itself? Did you answer that one already?
Yeah, I said that already. So at least from a chatting model to a certain degree, so there are definitely internal, external penetration testing before we ship any kind of this model into the real world. And that's one of the things that we do. There's lots of the training efforts that are revalidated all the time during the training process as well. And there are lots of security guardrails, as we call it, inbuilt into the system. For example, if I ask ChatGPT in a normal way to create certain things in OpenAI service 3.5, the 4 version already did have certain guardrails. 3.5 already also has re-implemented that after the fact, more or less, but you can make sure that Security Copilot isn't misused in the way that was described. So, for example, I can't create, for example, a malware with Security Copilot, things like that. I can't misuse it to write certain offensive code as well. That's not the thing that it's working on. It's featured on, or it's more focused on understanding your security state, understanding if there's any kind of security posture drift incident or something like that happening, and responding to this in the right way. If you can't, if you ask, for example, such a model to do certain things, we always say, oh, I'm not that kind of model, or I can't do that because I'm trained not to do that. Something like that. So also from an attack standpoint, the attack surface on this is quite low compared to any kind of other normal AI model, just because of the connectors that are already pre-configured to a certain degree and also pre-tested on security. Just there is, that's a good thing for any kind of AI operations. There is a new OWASP top 10 on vulnerabilities on any kind of AI. It's not specific for any kind of ChatGPT derivative, but those safeguards or those risks are definitely tested before we ship any kind of AI model into the Security Copilot world. So there's pen testing internally and externally going on. And it's also having its own guardrail, so the AI understands that it can't do certain things and it shouldn't do. So there's some kind of ethics built into the AI as well.
All right. Are there any other questions in the chat? Let's see if anyone else has got anything. Looks like that might be it for questions, Andre. Well, oh, Manfred said something, prompts like act as or filter. Oh, okay, that's not a question.
Yeah, so act as, for example, is something that you could do with a normal large language model. So I can say, so you, for example, act as a certain person or a certain role in an organization. So take a certain point of view. There's something that is not doing something in Copilot, for example. So you can't say something like that because it's not this kind of model.
There's another question in here.
Yeah, I've seen that. So yeah, you can have Splunk integration into this kind of incident. So you can definitely analyze the incident itself. You can also write some kind of the alert integration with that. The question is more, is really all the data in Splunk from all the different security silos? That's the thing. But you can also definitely investigate easier without scrolling through all the raw data. I would say that is maybe linked to that. So there's always a longer kill chain than just the identity side. There may be something like URL click, a mail, or something like that already inside this organization, some kind of endpoints involved or servers involved, and also lateral movement going on, and sometimes data exfiltration or maybe encryption. And all those different components from the user identity application endpoint, but also entry point into the organization, are maybe taken into account and give you a complete picture of. So ChatGPT, so Security Copilot in this case, can give you an easy way to understand what's the reach of the breach, actually understanding where it started, where it ended. It's not probably the only thing that's happening in some kind of the Active Directory changes. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Andre. And thanks everybody for joining this tech talk. There's a lot of great insight right there. Another shameless plug. I'm going to put in the chat real quick. Be on the lookout for a bunch of our other tech talks that are coming up throughout this year and in 2024. I put a link in just now that's for all the tech talks. You can go and click which ones you're interested in. Also, this is the one that is coming out. I'm going to put another one in the chat that's coming out next week on 9th. What should and should not be in your Active Directory disaster recovery plan. Like I said, thanks, Andre. Any last words you want to give to our viewers today?
Yeah, thank you so much for your attention, and yeah, keep secure or stay secure in this case, and have a look into what Security Copilot can do.
All right. Thanks, Andre. Thanks, everybody.